Okay, lesson 6.4, the very last lesson in Algebra 2. Scientific notation. Scientific notation is used to be able to get very large or very small numbers. See our learning topic, I should say, target. I can write numbers in scientific notation and decimal notation. Honestly, decimal notation is really known as standard notation. And we can perform computations. What does scientific notation look like? Well, you're going to have some number. That number is at least 1, but less than 10. You can have decimals. It could be something like 2.51. Could also be something negative. But you'll have some number between 1 and 10, at least 1, but smaller than 10, multiplied by 10 to a power. That n is always an integer, like -3, -2, -1, and so forth. So just a word of caution, your calculator displays scientific notation in a slightly different way with E. So if you ever saw 6.02E23, this is 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd. Very important that you realize that. Okay, if you type in your answer with an E, it's no good. Likewise, if you had 3E -15, that's really 3 times 10 to the -15. Okay, so one thing that you're going to have to do for some of these problems, I hope it's going to be some of the quickest problems that you're going to have, it's to be able to write these numbers in scientific notation. Now, right now, they're in standard notation. Tell you what, take out your TI-84. I do want to show you something. Your TI-84 can assist you. So what you do is you just press mode, and mode will allow you to go to a scientific notation setting. And this can be very helpful. So mode's right at the top. If you see your arrows here, here's your down arrow, left arrow. Just go a couple buttons to the left. And at the very top, you've got normal or standard notation. Hit the right arrow to go to scientific, then hit enter. And it's at this point where you're going to be able to go ahead and do scientific notation. You know, if you move down, you're going to see scientific is highlighted. So I'm just going to type in, and we just have to make sure we're counting the zeros correctly. A 7, and then you can see a 600, and then the 3 zeros after the comma, so we can say 1, 2, 3, and another 3 zeros after the comma. And you can see more or less, as kids had said, there should be 8 zeros. You could count that up. Now, you'll get 7.6 times 10 to the 9th. Now, you don't write your answer with the E. If you did that, Alex would actually mark it wrong. I just want to warn you about that. Now, many of you will correctly say, wow, I don't even need a calculator for this. You know, what you could do is take your decimal right here and count how many spaces you have to move. You can see we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 until I get a number between 1 and 10. And that's 7.6. And we know it's a large number, so we'd have a positive exponent. That's how you do it by hand. But I did want to show you that your calculator can just do it for you. Look, you could have something very small, the radius of a hydrogen atom. And you can see right here as you're counting this out. By the way, if kids get this wrong, typically it's because they count. Some kids tell me every 3 they put like a little marking. That's a clever way to just be able to count. You can see you'd have a decimal and then 3 zeros, another 3 zeros, another 3 zeros. That's 9 zeros. 1 more is 10. What am I getting at? You could get right here 10 zeros. We can say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Obviously, you just got to make sure you count it correctly. And then you'll get 5.3 times 10 to the -11th. The fact that you're seeing a negative exponent means it's very small. Okay? Now, could you have done this by hand? Of course. You can just count the number of spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But then you move it one more to get a number between 1 and 10. So that's where that 5.3 is. The fact that you had to move 11 spaces to the right means that you've got negative 11. Now, I believe in ALEKS, the next problems are actually going to say go to standard notation. Decimal notation and standard notation are one and the same. But of course, what you can do, guys, is convert back to standard or normal. I pressed mode, hit enter, and you could real quickly just say 2.39 times 10 to the 5th, and it pretty much is going to get it to you, 239 with 3 zeros. And you could always double check by saying, if that were the case, would I move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? You could do a real quick check to make sure that that is in fact correct. So this one right here, 7.5 times 10 to the negative 6. This one, maybe the calculator is going to give us some difficulties. And we've got to be careful with that. Let's see, if we wrote 7.5 times 10 to the negative 6, you can see, it's giving me the exact same thing. Now, every once in a while, ALEKS will do that. So we've got to be careful. Here's where you'd say, well, I'm trying to use my calculator. It's not helping me. What you really have to be aware of is that this negative 6 is telling you that you've got a whole bunch of zeros. It's a very small number. But you can say, look, I'd have to move 6 spaces to get to the 7.5. We'd go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And everywhere where you'd have that additional space, you'd have to put that in. So what would it really look like? You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zeros. So most of the time, you could just type that straight in, and ALEKS would immediately convert it to standard notation. Here, though, you just have to double check and make sure you're right. All right, going to scientific notation now. Our last problems, nothing but really button pushing here. Let's go back and change our mode back to scientific. And then what? Tell you what, just type it in as you see it. You could go 3 times 10, bump that up to the negative 12. And then move your cursor down. Say new parentheses, 5 times 10. Bump that up to the 16th. And move that over. Just let the calculator do all the heavy lifting for you. 1.5 times 10 to the 5th. You can see what's happening. Yeah, you see that E there. But the way we type that into ALEKS is like that. Okay? Notice for B, we're changing that. We made a little change. Tell you what, I'm going to make my fraction appear. Alpha y equals. Up on top, we changed this to a 4.9 times 10 to the negative 8. We'll have our power up here. Honestly, guys, so much of this section is just being patient and just typing it in. 1.4 times 10 to the 6. And you just let the calculator tell you it's 3.5 times 10 to the negative 14. 3.5, 10 to the negative 14, the very small number right there. Last one, and you can see how quickly you're going to be able to do these. Just make it appear exactly how it looks. Negative 2, we'll say times 10, bump it up to the 9th power. Close your parentheses, and then bump that up to the 5th. And without too much work, you'll get negative 3.2 times 10 to the 46. Okay, you can see that E there is always the way we can get help from the scientific notation. So, like I said, most of this, super short.